Bringing on Mike Commito from Hockey 365. Second period. Mike, I just want to say, look who's doing the forwards on this. Ron McLean, Bob McKenzie, and Chris Cuthbert. Jeez is right. Some big names. Now, Mike, this, for everybody that doesn't know, this is your second book from Hockey 365. So what is if you were to explain it to your grandmother who doesn't read hockey books, what would be... Well, what would you say? What's the book about, Nana?
Yeah, so I have a Nona and a Baba, and actually my Nona bought one of the books. I don't think she'll read it, but what I would explain to her is that it's 365 short hockey history stories, one for every day of the year. So we actually have 366 because you have to account for leap years, and so basically every day of the calendar year you've got a different hockey story that celebrates a different anniversary or milestone in the game's history.
Awesome. Very cool.
It sounds like an easy read, right? You don't need to be an egghead.
No, I think I tried to write it in a way that's accessible and engaging and fun. I think the interesting thing that I learned after writing the first book is I had some parents come up to me afterwards and say, my son or daughter doesn't like to read a lot, but they're hockey nuts, and they read your book cover to cover. And so I kind of thought that, going into this, I didn't think I was writing a book that would appeal to kids. I kind of thought I was writing a book that would appeal to people like me that are hockey history fanatics. But you quickly learn that I think as the one-page format per story, anybody could read it, whether you're an old hockey fan or you're 10 years old and you love the game.
That's perfect for me. I see like a 8-page chapter. I'm like, that's enough. I'm not getting through this book.
But that's the thing, right? Mike, the thing is that hockey does have an extremely rich history. But because it is like the fourth of four top North American sports, it depends on what you include as top North American sports, the history, there's no ESPN 30 for 30s on hockey history. There's very little out there. I know Sportsnet and TSN do some every once in a while, but the depths that you go with this history is pretty cool. And the thing is, this game has changed so much over the last 120 years. Some of the facts in here are absolutely mind-blowing. And I was just hoping, is there something that stands out to you from the first book or this one, whatever you feel comfortable with, because we don't want to blow this book, that even as a historian surprised you, one of the ones that sticks with you when you think Hockey 365?
Yeah, I think because it's largely does focus on a lot of the NHL moments. Certainly, I think there's some moments from outside the league's history, women's hockey or international game. But I think the thing that always, even though these dates and these facts, that always makes me chuckle is when you think back to how the sport has actually evolved over the 100 years it's been in the NHL, right? And so I've had a couple stories in the new book and the old book just talking about the rule changes. I think things that we take for granted, that a forward pass wasn't legal for many years in the NHL until just before the Great Depression started. The idea that you couldn't pass within each of the zones, now seems insane. The other one that I have, I think in the first one as well, is just the introduction of the penalty shot. And when they first did it in the 30s, it wasn't the breakaway format that we see now. It was you were in a stationary circle from 38 feet out and you just took your best shot at the goaltender. Obviously, it heavily favored the goaltender because really you knew where the shot was coming from. There were no surprises. But it's things like that, some of the innovations over the years, with Art Ross and the tinkering that he did, to help innovate and improve the game. Those are always the things where, even though you're probably aware of some of these things, if you study the history closely, it still always just kind of, throws you for a loop when you think back just how much the game has truly evolved to where it is now.
I enjoy learning things about hockey because I feel like there's, I know the 2008 Leafs onward, basically, because of LFR and stuff. So my old stuff is lacking. The stationary penalty shot is something I've never heard of in my entire life. That's never even slipped out of Jeff Merrick's mouth. And it seems like exactly the sort of thing he would know. So I'm very impressed.
For sure. Thanks.
In a hockey trivia competition, who would win? You or Merrick?
Oh, Merrick would destroy me.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah, no.
I was hoping you'd come out and be like, "Oh, I'd crush Merrick,"
right?
And then we bring you both on the show and have a fight.
Oh man, I think I could keep it competitive. I would at least be alive in the competition, but I think for sure he would bury me.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
And you'd know it was over when he starts with Mike Commito. I remember watching you with the Junior B Coburn Clouds or whatever. Like when you were 8 years old or whatever. Like he would know everything about you, and you'd be like, all right, it's curtains.
Well, so the other day, like we did a virtual book launch, and Merrick was kind enough to host it for me. And we were going through some of the stories in the book, and we arrived at a story about, Jerry Topazzini, who used to play for the Bruins, was a big name here in Sudbury, and he had this bar before he passed away that's called the Beef and Bird, and it's basically just a tavern that you would go to drink and have a good time, and it was full of Bruins stuff. But Merrick said, didn't he also own a hotel? And I had never heard of Jerry Topazzini owning a hotel. I found out after the call that one of the locals who was on the launch with us said that, actually Topazzini bought the Belvedere Hotel, which I'd never heard about before, and then turned it into the Beef and Bird. So Merrick, even was something that like I should have known as a Sudburian, he got me on that one and stopped me dead in my tracks.
You got to be kidding.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's so Jeff. That's so very Jeff. Yeah, unreal. Now
sorry, I can't get over that.
Crazy.
I would 100% listen to a Bill Burr podcast style Jeff Merrick, just things he knows.
Yeah.
He just launched a new show, so I think maybe he will. I hope he does. He's doing a 2-hour national show every day.
There's a podcast idea for you, Mike. Fill in the gaps with Jeff Merrick. Like you say the things you know, and then he's like, and also they bought a hotel. And like,
you two going back and forth would be such a compelling show.
Who would like or find the thing that Jeff Merrick doesn't know?
Yeah,
that would be a challenge, I think.
Right, I think it would.
What is it, like Fool, Penn and Teller or whatever it's called? Yeah.
Oh man,
we have a network.
Yeah, well, so does Jeff. So I think
which is it?
I think Mike, what's so cool about this is it gives us the bite-sized version. You mentioned that, and the thing with Hockey 365 is that when I look at it, I look at it from a different perspective, only in this way. When Steve was writing his book, which he never talks about, he every day when we would go to Rogers to record at the Fan 590 when we were recording there, Steve would tell me an update on the book. And this is for a year and a half. You were writing that thing?
It was a long time.
It was a long time. And it dominated your life, right? It took over Steve's life. And I look at yours, and Steve was telling his story, and it's like, what parts do you leave in? What parts do you have? We got this. I did 14 pages last night, and it took me 6 hours, and like there's a lot that goes into this that I don't think people realize. And here's the thing about you is that you're researching 365 different things, and you've done it again. Mm-hmm. So when you wrote the first one, did you go, there's definitely enough gas in the tank to do a second period, and now you've done a second period? Are you going to just leave it at that?
No, I think we've definitely committed to the third, because they've even gone as far as, restylizing the first book as new copies that get printed of the first one will now be called Hockey 365, the first period.
Oh,
cool. So
wow.
I think I have to finish regulation. It's then the question of, do you do overtime, sudden death, shootout,
Game
whatever. Yeah, whatever you want to do, right? I think there's enough hockey history to do all those volumes, but I think certainly when I did the first book, I'd never written a book before, so I didn't know what to expect. It was a very quick turnaround. I had 6 months to do all the research and all the writing, which admittedly was insane. I had, at that point in my career, I was a year into a new job. I had a young, 1-year-old at home. So it was a lot of late nights. It was, by the time the process was over, I said to myself, I never want to do that again. I'm glad that I did it because, the book is out and I'm able to finally see all that hard work put into it. But I'm like, I don't want to ever do this again. And then, the pandemic came around, and I had been doing a lot of writing for the Kings and my local Sudbury Wolves team. And with those commitments kind of shelved, I thought, now is the best time to kind of dive into another book project and spend months kind of doing it. Because that's the thing with writing a book is that it takes so much time and you're not able to share with everybody versus like an online article. You get the immediate reaction to it and results that you see when people read it the next day. But a book, like takes over a year before it's finally, out there in the world. And so I just think the timing kind of lends itself to doing it again. I'm not eager to do a third period right now, but I think if you talk to me in 2 years from now, hopefully my tune has changed because I have to finish regulation. Otherwise, it would be you can't just leave it at 2 periods.
If you didn't, criminal.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be quite annoying. So what was different the second time around? Like, what did you have a similar experience where you're like, I hit the 265 fact wall. Like I don't know if you get a certain distance into the 365 and go, I'm running out of facts.
No, it's almost kind of like the opposite. I feel like once you get through like a significant chunk and you're like, I'm halfway done, you just like, I can make it now, right? It's those first few weeks where you're like, okay, I've written 6 stories, but I have 360 to go. Like this is going to take forever, right? And I think as you keep pushing on and finding different ways to kind of, fill your day with writing, I think the nice thing about the second book was that I gave myself a little bit more time. I started writing it quietly without talking to the publisher just to see if I had the appetite to do it all over again. And then after a couple of months of doing it, I felt, I've got, 60 pages under my belt. I think I'm ready to pull the trigger on this and make it official. So because of that, I think I was able to enjoy it a little bit more this time around, having gone through the process. I think also, as a first-time author, you do all the hard work in getting the first manuscript together, but then the editing and the revisions come, and that's almost just as worse sometimes. And so I think knowing what comes next better prepared me to kind of enjoy the ride that I had before I submitted to the publisher.
Every year I talk about the disaster team or the circus team, the carnival team. Who historically in your writing and in your research were you like, oh, it's you again? Like which team kept popping up with the weirdest stories?
It wasn't necessarily teams because I tried to balance it out as much as I could, right? Obviously I'm a Leafs fan. I know that not everyone's going to want to read like a Leafs 365, although that would be a good book and it would probably sell decent.
Yep.
But funny enough, like one of the recurring characters in the book was Doug Gilmour. And I like to think that was by accident, but Gilmour was my mom's favorite player. And so it was always Gilmour. And so like, there's probably like at least, I would say like 5 different Doug Gilmour stories in the book, which is, out of 366 is quite a bit considering there's so many different teams and players that kind of come through. So again, I certainly appreciate Doug Gilmour as as a fan of the Leafs and a fan of that era. But yes, that kind of came in. I think I joke about it at one of the stories in the book that, your mom is always going to be the first person that's going to read your work. So I guess if nothing else, I'm playing to my base and making sure that my mom reads the book by having all these Doug Gilmour stories in there. But yeah, I tried to keep it, I try not to constrain it too much to certain players or teams, but certainly, Killer had a way of finding himself into the book.
Amazing. Well, listen, go ahead, Jesse. Go ahead.
One final question. When we were corresponding over email to originally bring you on, you mentioned that you had a Steve Dangle story, and I want you to tell it to Steve on the show.
Yeah, well, I think Steve knows this, but I'm sure a lot of people don't because I don't think I've shared it a lot. But so Steve Dangle was the one who broke my heart when he told me that I was not going to be in the running for TLN's Next Top Blogger back in 2014.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. Can I just say, I hated that. I hated every step of that.
Explain for people who don't know what any of that is.
It was, so we did like we wanted another writer on the website, and we came up with this idea.
The Leafs Nation.
On theleafsnation.com. Oh my God, Mike, that's so funny. I'm sorry, man.
Wow.
We wanted a new writer, and it was me and Justin Fisher running it, and we got an overwhelming number of applications, which meant we had to read all of it. Yeah. We had to read all of it, and oh yeah, man, we made mistakes.
No, but
we were Adam Lascaris, I believe, won.
Oh, okay.
He was,
that makes sense.
So we got that right, but yeah, man, I was obviously wrong about you.
No, but I mean, I would say that in your defense, like I had, at that point had just started to kind of dip my toe into hockey writing for like for a broader audience. And I think the story that I chose to highlight the skills that I would bring to the website, where I try to do a comparative analysis between the Ontario Spring Bear Hunt and Tyler Bozak to kind of make some analogy between like the stats don't always indicate the reality. It was really, because I was studying the history of black bear hunting and management at the time. And so it was a really weird piece that obviously was not what you guys would have been looking for. The funny thing looking back now is that I think one of the first things I'd ever written for a blog was I did like a fan post for Pension Plan Puppets. And the thing that I did was it was a complaint that EA didn't have James Reimer's rating high enough compared to his actual skill level in the NHL. So I should have led with that.
Yeah.
And you would have hired me.
I would have been like, this guy gets it. And then you go into the Bears. I'll be like the guy who was right about Reimer talking about the Bear. No, it's smart. Like with all those applications, yours is going to stand out because you talked about Tyler Bozak and bear hunting. But dude, I did not have the time for that, and I bit off more than I can chew. And Mike, I'm so damn sorry that I prevented you from writing 2 books. And probably
it motivated me to start. I started doing my own blogging at that time, just on my own website. And then the next year, I was doing stuff for the Royal Half. So yeah, and 2 books now, and we're talking to you today. So I guess it all worked out.
Yeah, Royal Half, and now LA Kings contributor as well. Mike also contributes to the LA Kings. So
what are you looking at me like that?
No, I'm just saying.
What are you leaning on?
You picked wrong, Steve.
I know.
That's all I can say.
Check out both of the 2 of 3 at least part series, we think. From Dundurn Press, it's Hockey 365. At Mike Commito on Twitter. If you love hockey history, this is the guy you got to follow. Just incredible stuff. Mike, it's so great to catch up with you, man. Thanks so much for making time for us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.